Thank you for listening to All Things Tech.
And welcome back to All Things Tech. This is Conscious Chat. We are coming to you from our studio here in Seattle, Washington, where a heat wave has been sweeping over, bringing temperatures up over 100 degrees in the forecast for the next couple days. And that type of weather is pretty rare in the Pacific Northwest here. If you'd like to hear more shows like this one, you can join us at www.truthbook.tk. Free streams are available on the website, YouTube, and SoundCloud as well. In tonight's program, we'll be going over Chaco Canyon Skywalkers, new artifacts that have been discovered, ETs, time travel, dimensions, and future civilizations. There will be a few other topics as well. Sudo will be joining us from the UK, and we will be speaking with One Shot today, a longtime user. He has over 20 years of experience working in the classified electronic security field, and he will be joining us from Dallas, Texas. So if you guys are ready, you can go ahead and get started.
So anything interesting been going on for you?
Not today, no, because it's very early. Yesterday I was listening to the conversation about Princess Diana. No, nothing much has really happened over here.
Yeah, 10-4. I watched part of a documentary, had a little bit of information the other evening. Maybe you've heard about it, maybe not. Something you might want to look into. I've known about it for some time, and it's always been something I thought deserved looking at. I believe it's in New Mexico, place known as, I believe, Chaco Canyon, C-H-A-C-O. Some early peoples, Chacarians or something like that, many, many years ago. Early civilization and unbelievable city and buildings. And if the reports are true, there was some type of crystal or disc found that was investigated and contained many pages of history, just like a DVD, but about some wing walkers, things like that. Anyway, you have to go back from the beginning, from some things that were found that was first called like a compass, I believe in the 70s or 80s, and then I think a local earthquake opened up some caverns that were otherwise unknown. 23, I think, was the number, and they were all empty but the last one, and they found some artifacts, but that's an interesting story.
That does sound very interesting. I've never heard of Chaco Canyon. I'm wondering, was it a recent discovery that they found this place? And that thing about the disc and the crystal, that's fascinating as well, because it reminded me of the crystal skulls, which they say contains the whole of human experience from beginning to end, and it can be accessed by channelers. But this all makes sense, doesn't it? Because we use crystals in our circuitry, in our computers, and they know how to put information in, and they know how to get it out, but even now they still don't know how it's actually holding the information. But yeah, this all points towards early civilizations who probably exceeded us in technology, because if the information is just stored within the crystal and there's no real other kind of hardware for putting it in or extracting it, it shows that they used some other kind of technology, doesn't it? One that, well, at least the majority of us people are not aware of.
Well, anyway, yeah, I thought it might be something you want to look up on Google. Chaco, C-H-A-C-O, I believe, Chaco Canyon. And yes, it's a tourist area now. A lot of it, like I say, wasn't really anything discovered in it until the 80s or 90s. One thing I found interesting that it did do, it brought to light, there's an agency, I forget the initials and the exact wording it stands for, but it breaks down to 4 initials. The society or associate, whatever. It brought to light there's actually, it brought more to light, I should say, a U.S. government body that's actually paid for and funded by the government that has the official duty to handle contacts with unknown, let's say, people from this earth. And they immediately took possession of that, I say a disc object, but the thing was, on several sources, you can read how it was cracked after a little bit of study, and there was as many as 8,000 pages of data they were able to get out of it, containing history, music, time. It has to do with some people that, if all of this is correct, were from 600 or 700 years in the future that came to these people. But it's interesting, their buildings are all laid out in the exact, and I mean exact, with measuring equipment that we can measure with today, an alignment of a certain star constellation and things like that. And I don't know, like I say, it interested me. It should give you a lot of good reading.
Yeah, I'd love to read some of that content. I'll have to take a look into that. Interesting that you said the organization contacts people that are here, living amongst us. Of course, if you mentioned this to the majority of people, they would just all say that you were putting out some kind of conspiracy theory or something like that, because that's how people have been brought to think about things. But it was interesting that you said it was allegedly from the future, which is kind of a bit like a contradiction in terms to have an object that is from the future in current possession. But I understand that, because I come to understand that the hybrid program, whereas extraterrestrials copulate with human beings, or they take genetic material, because the race from the quote unquote future is in danger. And I come to understand that the race that has been made from these copulations is called the Essassani, ESSSANI. And I heard this from a man who puts out information called Daryl Anker, and he channels an extraterrestrial entity called Bashar. So essentially, he's saying that this race of beings, the Essassani, are in fact in the future, like you say, but the other side to the coin is that they're actually half our children. So it's a little bit difficult to think about, but when you think about it for a while, you kind of come to at least a vague understanding about it.
Yeah, 10-4. Well, like I say, I have my own current interpretations as far as time travel, especially in the past. I would off the very first top of my head, I would say it practically impossible. But who's to say, anymore what is possible? But I've always thought of time travel in the past, could be so simply dissuaded by just a simple physical act of physics and time itself. And just for example, if I'm talking to you and I drop a cup of tea and it crashes to the floor, well, for you to travel in the past by machine or dimension or means or anything else, then of course you would travel back before that happened, and there's no amount of physics in the world is going to make that cup reassemble itself and come back up into the air and into my hands. But anyway, that's just things to theorize about. But I thought you might be interested in that because it came to mind after talking to you. It's got a little bit of space with it as well as dimensional aspects. And I took a quick look up on it on Google, and I believe the people involved, there was reference to, I believe they were called Skywalkers, things like that, but you won't get much searching into that. You got to go Chaco Canyon, Chaco, and I believe it's New Mexico. And I believe there's several things on YouTube, and hopefully one of them would be this documentary I saw.
Yeah, thanks. But I do appreciate what you said there about this Chaco Canyon. I've written it down and I'm going to have a look into it. The time travel time travel. I noticed that you said the word dimensional, and yeah, that's how I believe it happens. I'm not so sure that anybody has a device beyond the human mind. I've had experiences within dreams, sometimes dreams that seem very profound, where I feel like I've gone back in time and witnessed a few things. On one occasion, I saw a dinosaur, the Diplodocus or Brontosaurus type, and it actually lowered its head towards me. And then when I actually touched the top of its head, and I noticed it had short wired hair on it. Now, they don't present the dinosaurs in that way to us when we're children, and that made me wonder, did this dinosaur really have this short wired hair, kind of like a boxer dog? But there was another occasion just a few years ago in this house where I'm living now, and again it was during sleep, but I found myself in a local area, and the people walking around were dressed from a long time ago. And so I stopped one of these people and I said, "Excuse me, what year is it?" And he looked at me really strange and he said 1694. So I thought, oh. And I looked at my wrist. I noticed I had a watch on, but for some reason I had two watches on. I had a watch on each wrist, so I don't know what was going on there. But anyway, I progressed within the dream a little bit, and then the next thing, I was led into another room at the back of the building, and it was as if it was like a matron or whoever she was. It seemed like she was in control of this institute. So she sat me down, and I was getting a little bit upset because I was realizing it was just like I had my consciousness that I've got now as I'm speaking to you. I was realizing that I was in the past, so it seemed like it was a bit of a predicament because I didn't know how I'd got there or how I was going to get back to my family. So I started to get a little bit upset within this scenario. And then this woman said to me, "Do you love your wife?" So I said, "Yes, of course I do." And then she said in a really stern voice, "Well, go back then." And then with that, I woke up in my bed and I was absolutely blown away by the experience. So I actually think that time travel is something that happens by virtue of using the human mind. And I mean, although there may be devices out there, I'm not sure. But I'm convinced now that it can be done simply with the human mind, like the human mind is the finest spaceship in the world. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 10-4, mate. That's interesting. Interesting for sure. Just the engineer and the humorous side of me asking, from what I know about the upper UK, any of these things that bother you that you come across at night, when you're normally sleeping, make sure you don't have Welsh rarebit. I remember reading once, it's prone to give you visions if it's properly prepared. Am I right?
I'm really not sure. You used the word Welsh rabbit, and I don't know what you're alluding to there. That's the first time I've ever heard of that. Could you explain what Welsh rabbit is, please?
Well, like I said, I wasn't trying to be too humorous. It's just there's a specialized dish. I believe it's, however I might have said, I believe it's properly called Welsh rarebit. And I could not, at this point, without looking it up, tell you how to fix it and prepare it. But I do know, having read and being informed on many more than one circumstance, it's prone to give one visions when they sleep.
That's really fascinating. I'm wondering how they prepare that. I'm guessing it's a natural product, maybe something that they find, a plant, or maybe a mushroom or something like that. But I shall have to do a search on that also, because I've never heard of that before. So I'm learning a few things here today. I'll have to make a note of this Welsh rare bit. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. A very famous UK dish. I don't know, Scottish, English. You know, I've got that long-time friend from Manchester. I'll have to look him up. Possibly Irish. You know, but I say from the northern UK. It's not any of the colonies or anything like that. It's a Scottish, purely English or Welsh dish. I used to always think of it, they'd say rabbit, but it was rarebit. No, you better look that up straight away. My God, you may have accidentally been on a diet of Welsh rarebit. It's kept yourself in such a quandary over.
Yeah, well, that may well be the case. Because I mean, if it's made through what anybody would consider to be innocent foods combined, then yeah, it makes you think how many people are possibly experiencing hallucinations or something of that sort. I have engaged in the past in a thing called yogic breathing, which is like a form of meditation, and when you engage with it, it kind of electrifies your body when you get to a certain stage. It involves a discipline with the breathing and alternating the breaths between the nostrils and holding one's breath for periods of time and counts, and that kind of, it gives you an electrical charge, and then you hear like a high-pitched tone in the background, which I suffer with that anyway. I have tinnitus, which I think mostly has been caused by the advent of technology and all the Wi-Fi signals flying around. But also I investigated, because when I was like teens to early 20s, I was having a lot of dreams and things about UFOs, and seeing them in the sky in the dreams, and I did actually see a few UFOs in reality. But I also investigated not too long ago, around the year 2010, a society which is all over the world. It was created by a man from the UK named George King, and he created a society called the Aetherius Society. And this dealt with, and still does deal with, although George King passed on in 1997, deals with friendly extraterrestrials who, well, the claim that's being made is they're here to help us and help the Earth. The Earth is a being in itself, which is being abused by man in many different ways, and it's causing like degradations to the atmosphere and things like that. And these beings are alleged to use large crystals within their crafts, which they say are actually perched above our skies, although we don't see them. And they transform or transmute or process the energy that comes from the sun, and they use it in one way or another to send it back down to the earth, in this new form, and do repairs to things in the atmosphere and on the ground and stuff like that. But this society, when I investigated it, it's very interesting, because the whole way that I came across the material was in a very synchronistic and very unusual way. And the dates, the timing and such. They produced a manual called the 12 Blessings in 1958. And when they produced this manual, they were told that it was being delivered 52 years earlier than intended, because of the state of the world situation and the troubles that we were having and the problems with the planet. And then so when I encountered this organization, not knowing any of this in the year 2010, and when I received that particular manual, the 12 Blessings, which is a form of dynamic prayer, It was actually 52 years later, so there was the first coincidence. And the way I found out about this book was because I'd gone to the library and I found a book on the shelf called The 9 Freedoms. It was almost jumping out at me. So I read this book and it informed me about this other manual called The 12 Blessings. And it explained the background of how it was produced. The claim being made was that the being we know as Jesus came down to a small mountain called Holston Down, more of a hill really, in Devon in the United Kingdom, because this man, the leader of this society, before he created the society, was very concerned about the world and the state of the world at the time. So from the top of this hill, he was sending out healing to the world and just wishing that everything would rebalance and that there would be more harmony around. And so this craft came into his proximity. So obviously somebody picked up on what he was doing, and he was tasked with this mission to gather people around him, because he was a clairvoyant also. He was the first person in the United Kingdom to do a live clairvoyant broadcast on the BBC. So he was told to produce this manual called The 12 Blessings, and it was done in a very metaphysical way. Well, I read about this in a book, in the library book then, so I thought to myself, what is this 12 Blessings? And it went on to say that when the book was finished, it was presented in an ornate wooden box in which it fit perfectly. So I thought, that's interesting. So I went onto the internet, onto Amazon. I found a recent edition of this book, a new publication of it, so I ordered it. And then that day, my wife, because she used to run a charity store in my town, she came home with a wooden box. And Mother had found it in a bag, and her mother said, I don't know why, but I think Luke, which is me, should have this box. And my wife thought, well, why? She thought she was just being a bit silly, but anyway, it was her mother who said this, so she brought it back to me. She gave me the box the afternoon after I'd ordered this book from the internet, so I thought, oh, okay, nice box, and I put it on the windowsill. And then I think it was 2 days later, or maybe 3 days later, the book that I ordered from Amazon came through the door. I opened it, I looked at the size of this book, I thought about what I'd read, I looked at the box that I'd placed on the windowsill, and I thought to myself, I wonder. So I unwrapped the book fully, I opened the box from the windowsill, and I placed the book in the box, and it fit perfectly. You wouldn't have been able to put a cigarette paper around the outside. The only discrepancy with the box was a little deeper, so I ended up putting some sponge in the bottom of the box. But I don't have the book or the box anymore. I gave the book to a member of the society in my local town, and it was very strange how I met this guy. He featured in my dream first, and I sent the box back to the charity shop because obviously it didn't belong to me. I just had it for a while. But yeah, that was a fascinating event for me, and I am aware that there are intelligences all around us trying to help us all of the time.
Well, that's an interesting story. You know, coincidence or not, it's still an interesting story. Yeah, there's things around us all the time. You're right about that. But you know, for a few quid more, you probably could have got a tight fitting box from Amazon. But I think your story is better. You know, I've often thought about some of the things. Excuse me, I've often thought about some of the things, crystals and such. You know, as an engineer, there's electronics in my background, but there's 5 natural basic ways to create electricity. One of them being with crystals such as piezoelectric. You can think of terms along with a phonograph needle, things like that. If you don't smoke, I hope you don't. I've smoked all my life, not too much. But you may come across a cigarette lighter that has a spark in it. You know, no need for the flint. It uses piezo crystal. So, you know, that leaves itself a lot of openings there as far as properties involving crystals. But you mentioned something earlier about the glass skull, something I was interested in at one time. I want to say England, but there was an explorer. You know, there's been many skulls, many copies, many stories, but the most famous skull, I guess from Mexico or South America, where it was from, there was a famous explorer, I think from England, and his daughter was involved. And after he passed on, this daughter was involved in the promotion and the showing and the lecturing and such of this skull. But I believe in the most recent work I've seen that due to her own slip-ups, she took it too far for profit. Her own timelines, you know, slipped her up in that, and the technology finally did become available to find the tool marks and allow some dating, you know, to show that it was more modern made. That's about where I was on that, but I just enjoy talking with you. It's about 3:30. It's always good to hear from you. I hope things are going good. But no, you look up that Chaco Canyon, because that was interesting. And maybe I saw that just night before last. I want to say it's on a, it's one of the things we splurge on because I'm raising these two granddaughters. We have the cable because of them. So I have practically all the channels and most anything BBC broadcast and all of your channels. And so many of them are owned by the same outfits, Discovery and things like that. But I believe this was a program called What's on Earth or something like that. And they like to take like a pyramid or the Chinese wall, and with computer graphics they'll lift all the stones and bricks up in the air and show you what's underneath. So perhaps it was that show, but maybe I saw that in time just so I was able to tell you about it. But it's Chaco Canyon. You really ought to look it up because it left me with questions. Of course,
I'm sorry, I think I just cut you off there for some reason. I got a phone call, but I just rejected it.
Oh, that's fine. No, try to get your call. But I want you to look that Chaco Canyon up and see if there's any emulation of that broadcast on YouTube. And by all means, I was laughing with you, not at you. I was laughing with you, but that Welsh rarebit, I know I'm not wrong about that. If you were someone that was supposed to, let's say it was your job to determine.
I'm sorry, it happened again.
Yeah, on that Welsh rarebit, I know I'm not wrong on this. No matter how the dish is made, there is one aspect of it, or I wouldn't have remembered it. I have a very good memory. If you were the one that was your job, if you were in charge to determine the dreams of the king or queen or something like that, this is what you would have them eat. You know what I mean? And it's not eaten to do this. You don't eat it in order for that. It's just a known side effect. Just like some people say, I wish I hadn't ate those cucumbers at night, or something bothers you in the stomach or whatever. A known trademark of genuine Welsh rarebit is unexplained dreams. And look that up so you can tell me next time I talk to you. But I'll let you go. And as always, good to hear from you, and I hope you have a great day, and I guess we'll talk at you later. So it's your friend in Texas telling you bye-bye.
Yeah, and it's been great to hear your voice, One Shot. I've enjoyed the conversation with you. Before you go, I will say that I have looked into the crystal skulls, and that lady you was talking about there, Mitchell Hedges. Mitchell Hedges, I think, was the name of the man, wasn't it? His daughter. I can't remember what her first name is now, but I wasn't aware that the skulls had been verified, and dated. I was aware of the Hewlett-Packard experiments and things, but yeah, like you say, if it's getting late over there, and I will look into that Welsh rarebit, that's fascinating, and the canyon, and I appreciate the information there. As you rightly pointed out, things happen almost kind of like synchronistically for one reason or another. You know, you encounter an individual, you encounter some information, and you think, well, maybe this individual needs to know this information, and it's true, because the intelligence that is behind the scenes, you know, kind of moves the chess pieces on the table, which is, for all intents and purposes, us. But yeah, I look forward to having another conversation with you, One Shot, and I appreciate the information you delivered there. It's of great interest to me, and I will definitely look both of those things up today, actually. And I know you said it's late there, so I look forward to talking to you again, and yeah, have a great rest, and yeah, blessings to you, One Shot. Thank you for that.
Okay, bye-bye.
And thank you for listening to All Things Tech. This is Conscious Chat. Stay tuned for more shows posted daily. Listen to our programs anytime by joining us at www.truthbook.tk. Free streams are available on the website, YouTube, and SoundCloud as well. Again, thank you for listening to All Things Tech.